friends, to part two of my conversation with Mio Nunez. I'm excited at what more she has to share with us. So stay tuned. And it's important, like you said, to identify your triggers. For me, when I start feeling anxious, that makes me stop and ask myself, what are you thinking on? What is occupying your thought? And there's always a correlation between that. The things you're meditating on will either bring peace and rest, or they'll bring anxiety. So when I find myself feeling anxious, it means I'm thinking on wrong things, and I have to replace what I'm thinking with with what the word of God says about that situation. So earlier on, you described yourself as an introvert, and
Yes.
from one introvert to another, do you think that the way we're wired impacts how we rest? So for example, we all know that introverts get their energy from being alone. Extroverts get their energy from being with others. And so do you think in any way, I'm not saying it does, but I'm just wondering whether you think there's an impact about how we're wired on how we rest.
Well, it's when, and I think that if people don't know if extroverted or introverted at an early time, this will throw you out of whack. Because I didn't realize that I was really an introvert until the latter years. The last few years, I started realizing people drain me, and being around environments where a lot of people, I started noticing that I was quite cranky after service. Like after a Sunday service, I'm cranky. Don't talk to me after service. Don't talk to me after work, okay? Because I'm cranky after being with a lot of people. But I didn't realize that I was really an introvert. And once I started understanding, that made me start realigning and readjusting to dealing and coping with those moments where I'm like irritable. I'm irritable because I just did a whole bunch of serving and I need some quiet time. I just need like nobody talk to me. Like, so I will silence the phone, or I'll see the phone going off and I'll just ignore it. Um, I do a lot of this, I'll have some coffee, and I make sure that I take a moment of a woosah, that woosah thing, like, and it's just like realigning, like just, it's almost like when I drink this coffee, my mind just like, and I just feel like I'm in a whole different place.
Okay.
But yes, so you find like you have to do those little self-cares as an introvert to keep you, because we're really, we're friendly, but the way we spend time with people and how we like to spend time with people is different. And I like my one-on-ones, and I feel really refreshed when I'm in one-on-one sessions. But when I'm with like 1,000 women, like when we have pretty women, I'm like, oh Lord Jesus, help me get through the season. Like I have to do a lot of prayer, because I know how I get when it's too many women and everybody's like me, and I just like pause, stop, So I've, in knowing which side are you on, and everybody would be like, no, you're not an introvert. Yes, I am. There are moments where the extroverted me comes out, and I make plans, and let me tell you, I regret them like the next day. I'm like, why? But you know what, this is like, for an introvert, this is why we got to be stretched. And so in the last few, I would say in 2020, I feel that, God, even though with the pandemic, I feel like there's been a need for me to stretch. I need to work on that, because people really need you. And I didn't see like introverts as leaders, but you would be surprised how many leaders are actually introverts and are very dynamic and very impactful. So I didn't see myself that way. Like, I'm like, well, I'm an introvert, but I can't be a leader. But yes, you can be both, and you can be an effective leader even though you're an introvert. So there's a lot of things that I've had to learn through that.
Yeah, I get you.
As a result, but the key was like, once I identified my triggers, I was able to like.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. And the thing is that as an introvert, I know that I'm a leader, but it depends on the context I'm in. If I'm in a situation and there are strong leaders, I can step back and just follow. But if I'm in a situation where there's
Yeah.
no leader emerging, I can quickly, become a leader. The same thing about finding rest. There are people who say, "Oh no, you're not an introvert. You surely can't be an introvert." And I tell them, I'm an introvert who has learned to function in an extroverted world. It's like the world was made for extroverts. So I've learned how to function, but then I need that time away to get my energy back. So I know what you mean about the large crowds and the conferences and all that, And I think the Lord also requires us to get away. Jesus was the perfect example. I mean, with thousands and thousands
Absolutely.
of people following him, he would get on a boat, and by the time he got to the other side, the crowd had found their way to the other side. So we learn many times in scripture that he got away, he went away to recharge, to be with his father and, gain fresh perspective about things. So thank you about your response to that.
Yes, yes.
Now we're in the midst of a pandemic, and since March, we've been forced to slow down in many ways. Has the pandemic, how has the pandemic impacted, your time and your concept of time and rest and all that? Has it given you extra time?
Well, I'll tell you this. I know for some people, like the pandemic has been a hard thing, but when you're an introvert, this has been the greatest thing. Like you have your home and you don't have to like manage that part, if that makes sense. Like, so I'm not weighed down now from being around people. So I have all this energy because I'm at home. Um, but like we had to adjust, like having to find, like brainstorm how we can be effective, because your workplace now goes from a physical location to a virtual thing.
Mm,
So being, and I work with high school students in a dropout recovery program, and that became a challenge. And the concept of time became an issue because now that we are at home, well, there's no need to be calling students at 7:30 in the morning because nobody can pick up the phone. So
mhm,
our kids' response time was at 1 to like 7. So that meant that our time adjusted to fit, the time of the student so you can reach out to more students. So that meant that, of course, your sleep time changes. That meant that different things changed. But I felt like during the pandemic, I was doing even more work than normal. And that was strange, but because I had the energy to do it, because I was in in a setting with so many people, that wasn't an issue. Like I was able to manage, but it was a matter of the day, like how the day can change so quickly because you're at home. There's a lot of opportunities for distractions.
mhm.
There's a lot of opportunities for people. They think you're not working, even though I was working. I was working a lot, but people thought I wasn't working. They thought I was just home chilling. No,
Yeah.
I was definitely working, and so people were calling me for different things, and so I was still being able to do a lot of that, and so managing time wasn't a problem.
Mhm.
It was just it was just weird. But like I said, when the pandemic hit and we had to be home, for an introvert, that was like, yes, that's nothing for me,
I get you.
and it actually gave me an opportunity. Huh?
No, I said I get you. I get what
Yeah.
you
And
mean by,
so,
yeah.
yeah. And then I mean, I was able to break up my day to be able to walk, like, cause, it was during a nice, when the seasons was changing, I was
Mhm.
able to walk, and it have to be at work, physically, but I could walk in my neighborhood. And so I like that a lot. So for me, it wasn't really too much of of like, it wasn't that hectic. It was just a matter of, now that I have all this energy, how to redirect that energy and stay on task and stay focused. That was the real issue,
Yeah.
staying focused, because I'm like, I have all this time,
Yes. Yeah.
and then people just started adding to like my workload, you know. So
I hear you. So I think I feel the same way about the time. Um, the pandemic has changed, the whole concept of rest. For me, it's been a time to stand back, to listen more, to hear what God has to say to me. Um, spend more time with loved ones, and get to discover each other in new ways. So in the midst of a difficult time in our world, there have been nuggets of, things that we could just like take away from it. So let me switch gears a little bit and ask you a question that I ask all the other guests. And it's, can you remember a time when you had to rest? God had promised you something. God had spoken. Somebody had prophesied. Someone had brought a word of hope and encouragement to you. But the situation you were in did not line up with what God had said about that situation, and you had to wait. There's a waiting time between the promise and the manifestation. Can you remember a time when that was your situation?
actually, yes. Going back, that was, I would say, back in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Um, things were changing for me. I was making, like, things were just getting pretty dark. Um, and I was just getting desperate. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? I don't know what's going on. So someone gave me a word, and I didn't understand it, to be honest. And so I'm like, I don't know what, I don't get what this word. So then God sent something else, and it was more like, you need to wait.
Mm.
And I'm like, wait and deal with that. It's like saying, like, wait and sit in a hurricane, right? Three for like 3 years, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be in a hurricane for 3 years, getting beat up, and that constant, the rain hitting you, the wind pushing against you, that weathers you. And so I was getting tired. I was getting restless, and I was like, I can't continue this. I can't continue this. And I just like kept doing stuff to reset that feeling, and keep resetting it and resetting it and resetting it. And it took years before I saw what God was trying to do.
Mm.
And a lot of the times it's just the adjustment of your perspective, the adjustment of what God is trying to do in you.
Mm.
Because, and me telling, like, God, take this away from me. God was like, I'm trying to do something in you. Why do you want me to take this? And the longer you continue this, we'll be here another year in the hurricane. Okay. So I tolerated the hurricane season another year, but it was because God was trying to mature me.
Mm.
God wanted to take me to the next level, but he couldn't do that because I got stuck. I got in neutral, and the transmission wouldn't shift to
Mm.
drive. And so finally, after, waiting patient, now I wouldn't say waiting patiently, because, I'm not patient. I kept doing other things to manage that situation. Hence why, again, like, why in my last season, when this situation happened, it was very similar to the former, that period. I was able to just, like, okay, we're gonna fast, and we're not gonna worry, and we're gonna trust God is doing something in me. Whatever it is, God, show me what it is that you want to do in me, because this season came, but it's not for other people, it's for me. So what is it I need to learn? So that the word, that God gave for me to wait, to, it was teaching me to trust. Now I'm better at trusting the Lord. But that comes with seeking, that comes with, and that's what happened in those years that hurricane was happening. I was like, okay, I gotta hold on, because you gotta hold on to something, right? So I was holding on, like, like how the palm trees, like they're just like that weathering. So I was like a palm tree, and I was anchored in the Lord, and I'm like, God, I can't do this. No, I can't. I hated that feeling, but you know what? Now I have a different perspective. Now I have a different understanding. Now I have, because God, in those seasons when the word comes, you don't understand the word, but when it's happening, you're like, God, get me out of here. But then when it's done, you're like, okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yes. Yes.
Revelations, sometimes God has to, like, for you to understand the revelation, there's a process that comes through that revelation.
Yes.
You can't see that, you can't understand that revelation because you're in an you're over here. So he has to develop and process and refine you so that you can receive the
Yes.
next thing that he has. So
The process is key, right? We want to jump from here to here. Lord, just get rid of the process and just move us from here to there. And you said something interesting about the adjustment of your perspective, and that is a hard thing for people to grasp. Okay, when we're praying about a situation, we're asking God to change the situation, and sometimes it's us that He's trying to change. I remember a few years at work when I had a challenge with the people I was working with. And I was praying about it. And I remember after a particular time of prayer, it looked like things started to change. But the more I examined what was happening, I realized it was my perspective about the situation that was changing. The people didn't change. I was the one being changed in
right.
the process. I was being changed
Yep.
in the way I was relating with them. I was being changed about what my thoughts were about the process. So, that's very important about God wanting to mature us in the process. The process is hard. We read about these things in the word. We read about, the people God called and then the time of the manifestation. We read about Abraham. We read about waiting 25 years. And, we always wonder, why is there a process? What are you doing in the process? And, it's the same thing about gifting. God calls you, but he has to develop your character before you can walk in your gift.
Right.
We want to go from the calling to to walking in the gift without the process. So thank you for sharing that about a time when you allowed God to reveal to you the process that needed to happen. So, what is God saying to you right now in November 2020? What is He speaking to you today? What are you learning? And just share with our viewers, just give them some parting words, words of encouragement, exhortation, whatever God is saying to you right now.
Well, I know I touched upon, the wholeness, and that's been my life journey lately, about wholeness. And in that wholeness, God has revealed to me how much more I need Him, and how much that nothing else matters. Like I know we sing these things, but I've gotten to a place where I get like, I need to be with Dad. I need to be with my Father. I need to be with the Lord. I have this intimate, deep yearn. And the Lord wants His people to be hungry for Him, just for Him. And I think we get it confused with, oh, going to church. No, it's your personal time, like what you're doing
Mhm.
at home. What, this pandemic, what it shown me is like what it feels like to have an intimate relationship with the Lord that people are not really experiencing. And in that, I found a lot of joy, a lot of peace. And for me, that's basically what I feel that God is really trying to get at. If when you take time to be with the Lord, God can continue to transform you, to continue bringing that healing, because in that process, God's like in that wholeness journey, and in that intimate time, God is like bringing stuff up and and then I just feel more at peace, and I've never felt this great You know,
Wow.
I don't think I've ever felt this way my whole entire life. You
Yeah.
know, I've dated people hoping that I would be happy. That did not work. The relationships that I've associated with, and I wanted to be happy through these relationships. Those relationships are no longer around. The people that I wanted to trust, and they're no longer around. The people, you know. So what God has done is just removed all the people that I've thought would help me. And he's like, okay, no, 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 no. Now look at me. I'm the one that I want you to get the source from.
Mm.
That what you're looking for? I got it.
Yes.
That you want a friend? I'm your
Yes.
friend.
Yes.
And so truly developing, I am a friend of God. No, having a friend relationship with the Lord.
And not just thinking about
Having
it.
that, you know, you are the king. Having my moments where I'm trying, huh? I'm sorry.
I said not just singing about it, but
Yes, and that's the connect, the worship, true solid worship, where when you worship, you know who you're worshiping, you know where you're putting your worth in because you trust the Lord. And that's what I like for me in this season. And like I said, this has been as hard as it's been. I've seen God like in my face. I've experienced the Lord closer and closer. So when I get into worship, let me tell you, I feel like people are missing out on God's presence because we're so worried about this pandemic. We're so worried about the uncertainty, but we're not trusting in the Lord and focusing on Him. So I will say, definitely get into God's presence, get into His Word, desire more of Him, and everything else will just fade back, and He will be the present, like He would be right there, and you would be so much. I didn't realize how much like our soul needs work, how
mm,
our soul is not surrendered truly to God. So in this season, surrender truly to God, and
mm,
you'll see what God has for you. You'll see how God is really for you and is wants to see the best for you.
yeah.
And like I started out, I am a daughter of a king,
Hmm.
and remembering that has and truly believing that has really set me free.
Good. Wow. Mio, you have such profound, you're wise beyond your years.
I'm not that well. I'm pretty old. I think I'm old.
So, yeah, so you've just shared with our viewers about the importance of one-on-one time with God. You know, intimate relationships require time, and we look forward to spending time with our loved ones. If we truly love someone and want to be intimate with them, we spend time with them. Even when
Yes.
we're away, our hearts are longing to go back, you know, and spend.
Yes.
And something else you said about working on the soul to be surrendered to God. When we become new believers, it's our spirit that is changed, but the soul is in a
Right.
constant state of being renewed. And the only way our
Yes.
minds
Renewed.
can be transformed is to spend time with the one that we want to be most like, right? I find that
Absolutely.
when you hang around certain people a long time, you start picking up on the ways they talk, their mannerisms, and all that. And that's how it is when we spend time with God. So thank you for sharing that with our viewers. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your joining us today. You've dropped a lot of nuggets of wisdom, things that you've said things that I think will bless our viewers, and I truly appreciate your time. So, friends, that is all we have for today. I hope you've been blessed by Mio the same way I have been blessed. And I look forward to seeing you all at my next Rest Stop conversation. Bye. Thank you, Mio.